I just thought, I've never been angry where I'm throwing things, in my head. Bipolar was just this weird illness where people just are enraged and throwing tantrums and throwing things, and I don't do that. And yes, I had these moments in life where I've slipped out of reality, which is part of mania, but I had never experienced heightened anger. So, all right, my name's Cayana Mackey. I'm originally from Chattanooga, Tennessee. If I could talk about myself of who I am, honestly, I think I'm just a creative visionary. I see life as what it can be, not just what it is, and I try to pattern my life after that of how can we make this better, not just let's make the world a better place, but just how can we improve on the quality of life of people, or how can I help an organization get to where it needs to be. So that's true to my core, is just making those little improvements. Yeah, it's been a journey for me. Self-care, I never even heard that term up until I got to college. Self-care is not really something that's talked about in my community, especially my parents from the Caribbean. And taking care of yourself is taking care of your family first. You really have to be about what they're about. You have to put their needs in front of yours. And, as much as you want to make sure you're good, it's more about how can we make everyone else good. So growing up, self-care was not a thing for me. I took a few social work classes when I got to college, and that was the first time I ever heard the term self-care. And, people saying there's burnout, there's, different things that can happen when you're so focused on everyone else and everything else, and having to take a step back and say, no, I need to figure out what I'm about. Everything kind of came to a head my spring semester of my sophomore year. I had been in this just intense state of running here, running there, and just feeling overwhelmed emotionally and mentally, not knowing why, and also not knowing why I was depressed too. So for someone to be so social and run around with a smile on their face, be here, there, have so much energy, to have deep depression at the same time just didn't make sense. I held that in. I didn't tell people I am so depressed. I don't know why either. There's nothing excruciating happening in my life to make me depressed. And through that time, the next part of the depression entered a world that I had never experienced before, never even heard of, called mania. And in mania, that is when you have heightened emotions, heightened thoughts. Your thought patterns are scattered. It was a lot of me not really having grips of reality, which sounds crazy to think that really happens, but I had lost track of reality at that point, and I had to really try to grapple with the feelings of being very depressed, but also having this heightened sense of urgency in my mind and not knowing why my thoughts were racing, why I couldn't get anything together, why everything just kept falling apart. And after that time, I ended up getting hospitalized for 2 weeks in a mental hospital, and no one really knew exactly what was wrong then. People thought I was overwhelmed, I was stressed, and not really understanding fully what was to come. During that time, it was really scary, really traumatic for me, even my friends who had to see everything happen, and just not knowing what was going on was probably the hardest part. Is just knowing that I was here and now I hit rock bottom. I had to drop out of school. I had to move home, and for someone who's so prideful in my achievements, it was hard for me to have to take that step back and feel like I don't know what's going for me, and feeling like I didn't have anything going for me. But also, I can't sit still long. So literally a week after I got home, I got myself a part-time job and just hit it going hard, trying to figure out, what I'm doing next. I started working out hardcore, and just using all that pent-up anger that I had towards myself, about all the failures I thought that happened in my life, to just put it into running. So I started running every day, just being really into that. So that probably was the beginning of my self-care, was just taking a step back and really realizing that I can't just be going all the time. Like, I have to, be healthy. I have to do things I'm interested in. And during that summer, before I tried to go back to school, I really started doing things that I wanted to do, which shaped me into understanding more of where I was heading. And then after that summer, my grandmother passed away. And all those feelings that I thought I had conquered from my time at Baylor in the hospital resurfaced, because I wasn't dealing with it. I was just coping with it. And I then again slipped into depression, which led to mania, and was hospitalized for the second time that year. I was in a different hospital setting, and so they started throwing new terms at me. You could be this, you could be that, thinking of what my diagnosis was. And in the hospital, I also learned more strategies of dealing with whatever it was that they still didn't know yet. And everyone just thought, maybe she's stressed, maybe she's overwhelmed with her grandmother dying, just use these coping strategies, you will be fine, we'll put you on medication to deal with the depression, and you can move on. So the medicine that they originally put me on was working for a short time, but just still trying to figure out what was happening in life, and just feeling like I know something's wrong. I know there's something underneath that's not being dealt with, and it's not just depression, there's something more. To 2 weeks later being hospitalized again for the third time. When you've been hospitalized 3 times for manic episodes, they diagnose you with bipolar disorder type 1. So my third time in the hospital, I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder type 1. And when I heard that, I had no clue what it meant. I just thought, I've never been angry where I'm throwing things. In my head, bipolar was just this weird illness where people just are enraged and throwing tantrums and throwing things, and I don't do that. And yes, I had these moments in life where I've slipped out of reality, which is part of mania, but I had never experienced heightened anger. So this third time in the hospital, I went into classes where they taught us what it was like to deal with a mental illness, and I was able to talk to other people who were also dealing with that. And through those classes and learning different strategies of how to cope and deal with mental illness, I started realizing this is true. I do have bipolar disorder, and what it is bipolar means polar opposite. So there's 2 opposite sides of your personality. So you have mania, which is just heightened emotions. Some people do end up being more angrier, but for me, it was just this sense of high energy that I was running on, where, I felt like I could conquer everything, but also losing touch of reality in those manic episodes. And then the polar opposite side of that is deep depression, which is clinical depression. It's different than just something circumstantial. It's more of a chemical imbalance. And so because I have those 2 imbalances in my brain, it's when it collides together is when I have an episode that would equal a hospitalization. So learning all this about myself was very traumatic at first, to think that I spent 20 years being fine, thinking I was fine at least, but then starting to think back to signs of that showed, there were things, little things that I didn't notice about myself that other people didn't exactly experience in life, and, having to go back in time and think about, okay, when I was younger, I was really depressed for no reasons, and just thinking, maybe I was having a mood swing or something like that, or other times people would always tell me, you have so much energy, and, that too being a beginning sign of what was to come. So after that diagnosis, I had to figure out what's next. Someone doesn't just get a diagnosis and they're forced to sit there. Your life still has to continue. And so for me, I had to figure out what to do with this. Yes, I have bipolar disorder, but is that my identity now? Am I just bipolar and I'm just going to go throughout my life being that? Or am I not going to let it stop me from the goals that I had in my life? So after I got out of the hospital, I ended up going to a psychiatrist who put me on a treatment plan with medications, the same medications I actually take today, and started going to a counselor who was very specific in helping me come up with strategies of dealing with a mental illness. And through about a period of 4 months, I did not get back into school. I did have a small part-time job working at an after-school program, so just a few hours each day, and just really using my time to focus on what's next. What do I want to do now that I have this diagnosis? How is it going to affect my life? So during that time, I decided, you know what? I'm still Cayana Mackey. I still have to put my feet on the floor every day and get out of my bed. I still have to interact in life, so I'm not going to deal with this. And that's what I put in my head, is that it's going to the side. Was it the best way to cope with it? Maybe not, but that's what I had to do to figure out where I needed to be next. So after going through that process of saying, I'm not going to let this limit me, that's when I started learning how it can help me. Which sounds crazy, that a mental illness can actually help someone, but learning that my intense, heightened emotions can be challenged into creative outlets. Before I was diagnosed, I didn't think I was a creative person. I just thought that, sometimes I would pick up a pen and draw something. Maybe it was good, maybe it wasn't. I would write a lot, but thinking that wasn't good writing. But realizing that all those intense emotions or intense feelings could really be channeled into creative outlets is what helped me cope as well. I started writing poetry. I started doing art to really express the feelings that I had with not only dealing with my diagnosis, but also just inner feelings of things I was going through. And I just really started understanding that just because someone tells you something that you are, just because you have that illness, that doesn't define you. It just shows that you have another part of you that can be channeled into something good. So at the end of that year, I decided to go back to school. So I signed up for online classes at Lee University in Cleveland, Tennessee, and was determined to finish school. I set that goal for myself. You know what? I'm going to graduate college. I don't want to let this stop me. That is my goal. So that became my new focus, was graduating college. Then as I was getting closer to my senior year, I decided I don't want to stay in Tennessee anymore. I want to experience life again outside of the state. So that was my second goal, was to graduate and move out of Tennessee. I put all my energy into making plans to finish school, with the help of my counselors, with the help of good friends and family. I had a system of, this is how I study, this is how I get things done. I ended up transitioning to campus and taking full-time classes, and my entire focus was those two goals: graduate and leave. And when I had a goal in front of me, I was running towards it. And whatever I needed to get those goals achieved, I took advantage of, whether it was the free counseling at my college, or whether it was just being able to tap into accommodations at school. As much as I didn't want to, sometimes I had to, and just realizing there's so many resources and things out there that can really help people with challenges, mentally, physically, or anything, and just taking advantage of those. That really helped me with my recovery plan. So I did accomplish my goal. I graduated from college in 2014. I moved out of Tennessee. I ended up moving to Charleston, South Carolina, and it's been 5 years since I've been hospitalized for bipolar disorder. So the way that I was able to really come to terms and be able to realize that my mental illness does not define me was of remembering what my identity really was. You know, like I said at the very beginning, I know I'm a creative visionary. You know, I know that my faith in God defines me as well. And being able to understand that, yes, I have an illness, you know, yes, I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder, but that is not who Cayana Mackey is, you know. Even if you are diagnosed with something, or even if you just are experiencing intense times of depression, you know, that's not who you are. That's what you're experiencing, you know. And the way that I'm able to separate that from my life is to be able to still have goals. You know, sometimes, I'm not going to lie, just because I've been out of the hospital for 5 years does not mean that everything was good afterwards. You know, I still had times where I went down. You know, I had times where my medicine didn't get it together, where I lost insurance twice since I've been diagnosed on medication, having to go through times where I wasn't on medicine. And in all those moments where I was down, or I was trying to rebuild, or even this time of weird transition, what helped me was having goals. You know, a little goal could, even on a day where it was just so overwhelming, was, you know what, my goal is to get out of bed today. To be real, like, I had to set that goal. You know what, Kiki, that's my nickname as well. My goal today is to get out of bed. So I would tell myself, that's what you're doing. You're getting out of bed today. What happens after that, that's another goal in itself, but you achieve something. And just setting these little goals for myself, whether it was something as small as getting out of bed, which when you are depressed sounds bigger than it is, or even a little goal of saying, you know what, I'm going to reach out to these people when I'm feeling down. You know, I'm going to connect with my best friend. I'm going to call her and say, hey, I'm not doing well. Can we talk about it? Or even setting larger goals like, you know, for the future, I want to do this, this, and this. How can I get to there? You know, starting big and then scaling back, saying, okay, I want to go back to school. That means I have to study for this test. You know, I want to build my own business eventually. That means I need to know the right people to help me get there. And so the only thing that's really helped me, other than what I mentioned before, is setting tangible goals each step of the way. I watched Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt, which is a funny show on Netflix. But one moment in that show, when I actually was having a really down day, as funny as that show is, she said something that really has impacted me in the past few months. She said when she was down in the bunker, if you don't know the show, she was captured into a cult and lived in a bunker for I think 15 years, and it's just a funny way, but something that was really dark and challenging. She was telling one of her friends that you can do everything in life for 10 seconds. Her friend was like, that sounds crazy. What does that even mean? She said, I tell myself, I can do this for 10 seconds, no matter how hard it is. 10 seconds, and I count down. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, count all the way down to 1. I did it for 10 seconds. And then I say, I can do this for 10 more seconds. When I heard her say that, as funny and as ridiculous as that show is, it spoke volumes to me. No matter what I'm going through in my life, can I do this for 10 seconds? Can I be here on this earth for 10 more seconds? You know, can I get out of bed for 10 seconds? Can I open my eyes? And as crazy as that sounds, that's what I had to do sometimes, is refocus back and say, yes, I can do this for 10 more seconds. When those 10 seconds are up, can I do this for 10 more seconds? And little wins is what gives me hope and helps me know that I can keep going. If I had to give advice to somebody who knows somebody struggling with a mental illness, or even just having a difficult time in life, of how do you deal with that? You know, how can you be a friend to someone who's going through so much? First off, I would say it sounds overwhelming, you know, at first, to learn something so intense about somebody, and you know, you may not know what to ask or or how to even respond if someone reveals, you know what, I thought about committing suicide, or someone reveals they have a mental illness. And I think the number one thing you can do is to just be there and listen. That's the first off, is just listen. People, when they're struggling with something, they just want somebody to listen to them. You know, all those times that I was really down, even after I was diagnosed or before when I was experiencing things, all I wanted was somebody to not only listen and hear me, but to just sit there and hear me out through all the list of things that I thought were so horrible, and just hear it. You know, I couldn't keep it all in, and that's what that hurts me, is when I have to keep it in. So for someone who is struggling with that, as a friend, just be that ear. You don't have to talk. You don't have to give them a step-by-step plan to get help, because sometimes I just didn't want that help. All I wanted was someone to really hear me and to hear what I was saying, and not maybe validate it, but just say, I'm still here. You know, I don't understand it. I don't know what you're going through, but I'm here for you. Another thing that I really want people to know of how to deal with somebody going through a time like that is to hold yourself and your misconceptions accountable as well. You know, what I didn't, for the longest time, ever want to tell people I had a mental illness. I did not want that to be part of my life, to the point where I never told people. You know, even in this video, other people who, you know, I feel close to may not even know this story, because it's been such a personal thing to myself. And being able to tell others and for them to hear it is one thing, but also for them to cancel their misconceptions and just, you know, come and listen with an open mind, say, you know what, I didn't know this about you, and yes, it is scary, and yes, it sounds overwhelming for me to have to know this, but I'm just going to be here any ways possible. You know, I'm not going to say I'm going to save the day for you, but I'm just going to be there. As much as you need me, as little as you need me, I will be there. And another point that I really think is valuable and needs to be heard is that you can't judge somebody based on an illness. You know, yes, you know, people may look at me on the street or see me at work or you know, talk to me in person, and they don't see that because it's a hidden disability. They don't see that side of me, and so they would never know unless I brought it up. But being able to challenge your thoughts and know that there could be a lot of people around you who are dealing with something and you don't even know. And not just saying like, wow, this person's so angry all the time, they're bipolar. You know, that is offensive, because I'm not an angry person. I don't run around with, you know, wanting to punch walls. I'm not like that, but I have bipolar disorder, you know, and just being able to be open-minded about mental illness and having hard conversations is helpful. And also not just having those hard conversations of seeing what that other person needs, but listening to them and hearing, you know, how can they inspire you? I always felt like a charity case when I would tell people, you know, hey, this is what's going on, because I felt like they were over anxious or not knowing, like, is she going to do this? Is she going to do that? And to be real, I lost some friendships from the first time that I went to the hospital, just because they didn't know how to respond to that those behaviors. They didn't know how to be there for me. And so what I really challenge people to do is to let somebody with mental illness have a sense of independence as well. And that sounds like an oxymoron, so be there for someone and let them be independent, but it's just like, you know, we still have to set our own goals. I still have to achieve something in life, so, you know, if I'm being almost babied or felt like, you know, well, we can't let Cayana do this because she might get upset, you know, just being real and like, no, I still got to go to work, I still got to get a job, I still have to get paid, so things like that. I think for me, the one thing, if you don't remember any part of my story if you don't, if you can't even relate to any part of it at all, the one thing that I really want everyone to know is that it's okay to not be okay. When I learned that statement that it's okay to not be okay, I experienced so much more freedom. You know, a lot of times, especially in the Black community, we try to be independent. We try to feel like we can do this, you know, with all the adversity and things going on. Like, no, what, I can do this, I can do this. But it's okay to admit to yourself today, you know what? My goal can't be to get out of bed. My goal right now is just to be. And when I learned that it's okay to not have it all together and to be open and share with people, you know what, today's not a good day, I experienced more freedom through that than through my strength. I experienced more freedom in my weakness than my strength. And I think it's so beautiful to really be vulnerable and to really open up with people and share, you know what, today's not a good day, or guess what, today's a good day. And just being able to celebrate and then also mourn with others is something that I really want people to know, is that you can be hurting. You can be going through bad things. You can be experiencing horrible upsets and negative things in your life, but it's okay, because we all go through that. And when you reach out to somebody else and you tell them, you know what, I'm struggling, that's when there's victory, that's when there's power. And that's more inspiring to me, is knowing, wow, other people struggle with things, no one's perfect, than knowing that we all just push through it all. You know, I had to accept the fact that I don't got it all together. Today, November, I don't know what day it is, but today I don't have it all together. It took me a lot to get out and get here, but I'm here.